For more on Don Imus, let's bring in conservative columnist Michael Graham in Boston. He's a CBSN political contributor and a political editor for Inside Sources. Now, Michael, you made appearances on his show and also filled in for him when he was taken off the air after that Rutgers remark. Let's start there. Walk us through that part of his career.
So Imus was at the pinnacle of his career in the 90s. But after that, he started losing stations and was fading. And I think sometimes he was looking for angles and ways to get attention. But to me, the Rutgers story highlights the good and the bad of Don Imus. I did talk radio for 15 years. I'll never forgive Imus what he did because it forced me to do morning drive, which is the worst gig ever, getting up at 3 in the morning and trying to have coherent thoughts, not my strong suit. He was kicking down. People forget that what made Imus was his willingness to mock everybody at every level. A lot of people talk today, for example, about that infamous correspondence dinner with Bill and Hillary Clinton sitting there in 1996, and he made references to astroturfing the El Camino. What people forget is 2 years earlier, President Clinton was on his morning drive radio show, and Imus was doing the same jokes and mocking him right there. And that's what worked for Imus, was when he was a regular guy and he was mocking the people in power, as opposed to when he did something dumb like he did with the Rutgers case, where these women are playing basketball and they have no power and he's kicking down. And that was the downside of Imus. I just want to say one more thing. People ask me today, could you have had Howard Stern without Don Imus blazing the trail on Radio Drive, turning it into a talk? Could you have had Rush Limbaugh? And my answer has been all day long, could you have had Donald Trump? Because Don Imus came on the air and said, look, warts and all, I'm just going to be me. And he did say things that were absolutely offensive that I never would have said. But he said them with kind of this honesty and with this lack of sincere malice. He was really just trying to have a conversation and talk about how regular people really felt. And that populist strain that he represented, as opposed to Rush Limbaugh, who represents the kind of Republican strain, that's the strain, that's the bed of the audience that President Trump drew from when he was elected in 2016.
But he also rubbed people the wrong way, which was part of his shtick. He's been called a racist, a misogynist. He's also been called a pioneer in his field. In fact, Joe Scarborough of Morning Joe tweeted, quote, "Morning Joe obviously owes its format to Don Imus. No one else could have gotten away with that much talk on cable news. Thanks for everything, Don, and Godspeed." Now, for those who may not have lived through the Don Imus era, explain how transformative was his format and what he did.
So you used to turn on the radio in the morning and you get music and you get some shucky mucky guy. Hey, now look at the rain. It's falling down. It's cats and dogs. And they do dumb stunts, the WKRP,
bits.
The turkey out the helicopter,
yeah,
classic,
bits.
Don Imus came out and talked like a person, a normal person. But what was interesting is he transformed from talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll into talking about politics. And I think the best talk radio ever was in the 1990s, when Imus would go back and forth between having Senator, so-and-so talking about Bosnia, and then you'd flip over and look at his crew, and they would do a hilarious bit about whatever, guys trying to get dates. And he would bounce back and forth between the conversation about news of the day and then the kind of juvenile, dopey humor that guys don't want to admit, but we do a lot of, even in our 30s, 40s, 60s, 90s. And, my wife has never seen the TV series The Sopranos. We just started, I rewatched it a couple weeks ago. Everybody on The Sopranos, those blue-collar guys were listening to Imus back in the 90s, the 2000s. But you know who else was listening? Wall Street, the stock market. And so he could bring together Joe Lieberman and goofy jokes about, pot and goofiness. And that was the wheelhouse that Imus brought, normal conversation about politics. And it's changed everything since.
And here we are in 2019, still talking about Don Imus. Michael Graham in Boston, thank you very much.
Thank you.